The Chitrik Academy is dedicated in loving memory of Rabbi Tzvi Hirsh Chtrik.
Welcome to today's lesson. Today we are going to learn from Tashma, which is in the middle of the line. The line starts Kinesias, where the dot is, until on the next page, Chav Daled Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top, where it says Tashma. In our lesson, we will discuss the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Let us begin. Tashma, come and learn. It says in a Mishnah, Matzah ba'aveda, if a person found a lost item, im roiv Yisrael, if majority of people living in that area or in that area are Jewish people, then chayiv lahachris. Then the finder is required to call it out and try to return it to its owner. Im roiv kananim, however, if majority of people found there are non-Jewish people, then eine chayav lahachris. Then he does not need to return it, to call out to return it. This is the end of the quote of the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to try to prove from here what the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar is. So let's put a P on the side. This is a proof. The Gemara continues, Man shmaslei, who taught us the Amar that we say, Azlinan Basaruba, that we go after the majority of people who are found in that area. Who said that a person would give up finding his item if there are many people in that area? This is Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So seemingly this Mishnah goes according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So now the Gemara explains what it's trying to prove. Shmas mina, we learn from here that Kika Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar, that when did Reb Shimon ben Elazar say a statement that a person may find, if he finds an item in a public place, he may keep it? That's specifically b'roiv knanim, if the majority of the people found there are non-Jewish, then the finder may keep his item. Avol b'roiv Yisrael, but if majority of people are Jewish people, then the finder may not keep it. So the Gemara has tried to prove from this Mishnah that Reb Shimon ben Elazar will hold that only by Reiv Knanim. Let's go to our chart. This was our question number 1. We wanted to know, the question we had asked in our previous lesson is, does Reb Shimon ben Elazar hold that a person may keep it only by Reiv Knanim or by Reiv Yisrael as well? So we learn from this Mishnah, the Gemara is teaching us that maybe only by Reiv Knanim the finder may keep it. Let's change the color here. That maybe by Reiv Knanim the finder may keep it. However, by Reiv Yisrael the finder may not keep it and he must return it. This is what we have proved from this Gemara. This is what the Gemara has tried to prove. Let us return to our Gemara. We are holding Hamani. The Gemara is now going to try to reject this proof of the Gemara. So let's put an R here, but the Gemara is going to try to reject the proof. The Gemara says, maybe, perhaps, the Mishnah is not Reb Shimon ben Elazar, so we cannot learn what Reb Shimon ben Elazar's opinion is. Rather, Hamani, who is the Tana of this, who is the author of this Mishnah? Rabbanan he. Perhaps this is the opinion of the Rabbanan who argue on Reb Shimon ben Elazar. And maybe it's the Rabbanan who will say that by Reiv Knanim the finder may keep it, by Reiv Yisrael the finder must return it. However, maybe Reb Shimon ben Elazar will hold that in both cases the finder may keep it. That is what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is saying maybe, perhaps, this Mishnah we just quoted is not Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Let's write his name down here. Perhaps this is not Reb Shimon ben Elazar who says that Reiv Knanim he may keep it and Reiv Yisrael he must return it. Maybe Reb Shimon ben Elazar, maybe he holds that the finder may always be able to keep it. May always keep it. However, this Mishnah perhaps will go according to the opinion of the Rabbanan, who hold, and they will hold that only by Reiv Knanim the finder may keep it. However, Reiv Yisrael the finder must return it. So the Gemara is saying we do not have a proof from here what Rav Shimon Elazar holds, because perhaps the author is Rabbanan, not Rav Shimon Elazar. This is the Gemara's rejection. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question on this rejection. So we're going to put a question mark over here to show that we have a question. The Gemara is going to say, so Tishreit Mina, we should be able to say from here, based on what we just said, that the author is the Rabbanan, we should be able to say, D'maidele Rabbanan, that the Rabbanan at least will admit to Rav Shimon Elazar, that Berev Knanim, that the finder may keep it. What is the Gemara's question? What is the Gemara trying to say? We have previously learned, one of the questions were, that in a case of Rav Knanim and Rav Yisrael, the question we had was, we know that the Rabbanan argue on Rav Shimon Elazar, and that Rav Shimon Elazar says the finder may keep it, and the Rabbanan will say the finder must return it. The question is, by Rav Yisrael, they probably argue. The Gemara uses the lashon pligi. They argue by Rav Yisrael. This, for sure, they argue. The Gemara's question was, what about Rav Knanim? Do the Chachamim argue, do the Rabbanan argue with Rav Shimon Elazar, that Rav Shimon Elazar will say that the finder may keep it, the Rabbanan will say he must return it, or not? This was the question number 3 that we had in our previous lessons. That by Rav Yisrael, they argue, Rav Shimon Elazar will say the finder may keep it, and the Rabbanan will say that the finder must return it. The question is, what about Rav Knanim? That was question number 3 earlier. So Gemara is saying, based on what we just explained, we could answer that question. Why? Because we can say that we see by Rav Knanim, both the Rav Shimon Elazar and the Rabbanan hold that the finder may keep it. So let's just make a sign over here. The Gemara is saying that based on what we just explained, we should be able to answer our previous question. Our question number 3. But the Gemara doesn't use this as an answer. So therefore, this rejection that we mentioned is moved away. Let's return to our Gemara. So because of this question, the Gemara is going to give a different answer. That what? That this Mishnah actually can be Rav Shimon Elazar. However, it's a unique case. Let us see. So now the Gemara is going to give a different rejection. So this is rejection number 2 of why we cannot learn what Rav Shimon Elazar's opinion is from this Mishnah. So this is rejection number 2. Let us continue. Ella, rather, how would we reject this proof? La'olam Rav Shimon Elazar he. Really, the author of this Mishnah is, the Tana of the Mishnah is Rav Shimon Elazar. Va'afilu b'Rav Yisrael nami. And even by Rav Yisrael, Rav Shimon Elazar will say that the finder does need to return it. However, I cannot use this as proof to what Rav Shimon Elazar would say by Rav Yisrael in a general case. Why? Because Hacha b'mayaskinan, this Mishnah, in what case are we dealing with? Bitamun. If it was hidden somewhere, and the finder finds it, in such a case, Rav Shimon Elazar will say that by Rav Yisrael, that the finder must return it. However, in a general, regular case, if a person is in a public area, even if it's Rav Yisrael, perhaps Rav Shimon Elazar will hold that the finder may keep it. This is why we cannot prove from the Mishnah. Let's see this inside. The Gemara is rejecting it in a different way. The Gemara is saying that in general, Rav Shimon ben Elazar will hold that Rav Knanim and Rav Yisrael, the finder, may keep the item. If he finds it in a public area, even if Rav Yisrael, the finder may keep the item. However, this Mishnah that says if Rav Yisrael, the finder, cannot keep the item, it's referring to if a person, let's say this person over here, if this person had an item and he hid the item, he dug it and he hid it inside a pile over here. So then if this person comes along if it's Reiv Yisrael, he has to return it because probably the person who hid it is planning on returning to collect his item. Therefore, we cannot prove this for all cases. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question. I b'tamun, if it's referring to a case where it's hidden, ma yavidet tekabei, what is it doing by this person? Why is the person taking it and trying to return it to its owner? V'hatnan, it says in the Mishnah, matza kli ba'ashba, if a person found someone's vessel in a garbage dump, if it's mechusa, if it's covered over, someone hid it there, then la yigabai, don't touch it. Leave it there for the owner to come claim it. Migula neitel machris. If it's uncovered, then he should take it and try to return it. So why does Reb Shimon Elazar say, why would he say in such a case that the owner should, that if the finder finds it, if it's hidden, he should return it? Seemingly from this Mishnah, if it's hidden, if it's mechusa, it says, la yigabai, don't touch it. So why does Reb Shimon Elazar say to return it? So the Gemara is going to answer two answers. One answer is Kida Amar Rapapa. So let's put an A over here. We're going to have an answer on this line. Kida Amar Rapapa, like Rav Papa said, that Ba'ashba she'ena suya lefanois, that a garbage dump, which is not common that it's emptied out, for example, if this person living here, so he lives in his house, so he has a garbage dump behind his house, and he usually, after he leaves it there for quite a bit of time. It's not clear every day. He could leave it there for a few months. So that's called an ashba. It's a garbage dump which is not cleared often. So what if the nimlach alel afanesa? What if the owner of the house, we just saw, what if this yellow person, the owner of the house, decides that he wants to clear it out? In such a case, we say, since he's going to clear it away, he should take it and try to and keep it in his house until the owner and try to return it to the owner. He shouldn't leave it there because he's clearing it away. Rather, what should he do in such a case? Even according to the Mishnah, which we just mentioned, we won't say la yigabai, don't touch it, because he's clearing away the garbage. Rather, what should he do? He should take it and try to return it to its owner. So this is how we answer the question that the Mishnah says, don't touch it. But over here, because he's clearing out the garbage dump, and because it's not usual that he clears it away, so it makes sense that if someone hid it there, he didn't want it to be thrown out. He just thought he'd be able to come back in a week or two and collect it, because it's not usually cleared away. So in such a case, if a person finds it, he should try to return it. Let's say that again. The Mishnah, what Rav Shimon Elazar is referring to, is where a person owns a house, and behind this house he has a garbage dump. So because it's a person's personal garbage dump, so a person would usually empty it, let's say, once every 2 or 3 months. Let's say once every 2 or 3 months. So if this person comes along, he may see a garbage dump, and says, you know what? I know that won't be emptied out for another few months, so I'm going to hide something over here. Let's say he hides, underneath everything, he decides to hide a bowl. He has a green bowl. So he hides it underneath. But what if this person, after the owner of this dump in the house, after a few weeks, not a few months, after a few weeks decides to move it away, and he spots this green bowl that this person used. So then Reb Shimon Elazar would say that in this case, the Mishnah wouldn't say to just leave it there. The Mishnah would say, take it and try to return it, because the person who placed it there did not give up on retrieving it. And that is what the Gemara is answering. And therefore, the Gemara ends off, Hachanami, in our case also, Ba'ashba she'ena suyofanes, in a garbage dump which is not common to empty out very often, V'nimlach aleh fanesa, and the owner wants to empty it out. In such a case, Rav Shimon Elazar will say that the person should return it. This is answer number 1, how we explain this Gemara. Now let us return the page to Chav Daled Amud Beis. That this is answer number 2. So let's put a on the side for answer number 2. V'i b'yasema, or we could say La'olam Rabbanon. Maybe perhaps it is the Rabbanon. What the Gemara is answering now is that really this Mishnah, which we had mentioned earlier, our first Mishnah about Matzah Ba'aveda, that we had asked, that we could prove from here that the Rabbanon will hold like Reb Shimon Elazar by Rav Knanim. So we asked the question, why don't we prove from here what the Rabbanon holds like? So Gemara is saying that really it's the Rabbanon. And it's not referring to a case like we mentioned of a garbage dump. It's a regular case. And the Rabbanon say over here that they don't mean over here that the finder may keep it, rather that he doesn't need to proactively go and try to return it. Let's see this inside and we'll explain it. V'ba Yisema, or we could say, La'olam Rabbanon. This case that we had learned that if it's Reiv Yisrael, the finder may keep it, and the finder must return it, and Reiv Knanim, he may keep it. Mik Tani Hein Shalai. Does it say that the finder may actually keep it? That's not what it says. It says Eine Chayev Lahachriz Ktani. He doesn't need to try to return it, proactively return it. Rather, what should he do? V'yaniach v'yaisei Yisrael. He has to wait and keep it by himself. V'yaisei Yisrael, and a Jewish person may come. V'yavei simna v'shakil, and he may give a simon and collect it. So what the Gemara is answering is that, let's go back to the beginning where it says Tashma, where we started today. That when it says if a Yid, if it's Reiv Yisrael, he has to return it, but Reiv Kranim, he does need to return it, it doesn't mean that he may keep it, like Reb Shimon Elazar will hold. Rather, it means he does need to be proactive, he does need to go out and try to call it out to try to return it. However, he can keep it in his house, but he can't use it. And when Yaisi Yisrael, but if a Jewish person comes and gives a simon, then he has to return it. So what the Gemara is saying is that that Reb Shimon Elazar and Rabbanan are not saying the same thing. We cannot learn from this Mishnah that they would say the same thing. Rather, Reb Shimon Elazar will say that the finder may keep the item if it's Reiv Knanim. However, the Rabbanan, let's erase this, they would not say that the finder may keep it. Rather, they say that Eine Chayev Lahachriz, they don't need to try to call out to return it, but the finder, at the same time, may not keep it. So at the end of the day, we cannot learn from this Mishnah that the Rabbanan and Shimon Elazar will hold the same thing in a case of Reiv Knanim. And this is the end of this Gemara.